Let's look at negotiations, a very integral part of any property purchase process. So, to be able to negotiate better deals, better price, or better way of purchasing, for example, options, we've got to be able to negotiate first and then arrive at terms and then decide what we're going to do, whether it's terms of settlement or terms of an option. So, in order to negotiate better, there's a whole process to it, and so much so that I'm actually thinking of having a course separate on negotiations, because we come across all these negotiations all the time, and it's a lengthy process, and it's a delicate dance between the buyer and the seller. And there's something we are working on at the moment, and we've been dancing for 3 months, and we've got that in the bag. And now we are dancing with negotiations with government authorities in order to get our suitable terms and suitable dispensations for a planning permit, so to speak. So negotiations are very, very important, and they are very they are very they're at the heart of any property purchase. Unless you've got so much money that you can throw on a deal and say, okay, I'll just buy it, doesn't matter what it costs. So you got to negotiate. And there's a method to madness, to that madness. So let's look at preparation. The first thing that you got to do, you understand, everybody understand, get as much information as possible. And there are different things that you got to look at when you want to get information. For example, the first thing I do is jump on Google, find out what's happening. Even if I'm trying to, for example, we presented a case in front of council members, and there were 12 different councillors. I profiled all 12 councillors before we actually went inside to do a presentation. We wanted to know which councillor was going to be easy and which councillor was going to be difficult. I did all through Google. We Googled their names, we found out their background, we found out what they were doing. It turns out that they were 2, 3, 4 fighting among each other, and they were pointing fingers at each other, blaming each other for different things. So this is kind of information you want to have in your hand. You might not use it, but there could be something that comes up during your meeting that if you've done your homework on it, you'll be able to answer it much better and in your favor. So basically, find out as much as you can about them. Google, Facebook, LinkedIn. So much so that I'll give you an example. There was the no money down deal that I did. We had 18 objections for his planning permit, and I went into researching and finding out these objectors. So the council forwarded us all the objections, and all I did was I picked up all their email addresses and started googling them and started finding out where were these people coming from. And I found out what had happened was there was one person who was immediately affected by the development, who lived right next to the development. And what that person had done was he had sent emails to 7 of his friends, and asked them to put in an objection, just so that the number of objections were more in number. So these are the things that you want to find out. So when we presented with the council, we knew exactly what was going on, and we were able to highlight to the senior town planner in that objectors meeting, that in the council meeting, that this is what was happening. So this is trying to get as much information as possible. Another piece of information you want to get is, why is the vendor selling? So if you're buying something of somebody, try and find out what is their immediate need for selling that. It could be financial difficulty, retiring, downsizing, and you got to analyze all parties involved. So say for example, if someone's selling, or maybe they might be selling it to give the money to their kids, or selling it to buy another house, and all these things, and you got to find out who the decision maker is as well. And where is the vendor going to move out to after the sale? So these are some questions that come to mind when you're actually trying to gather information about the vendor. You got to research the property, suburb stats, everything that we've discussed under due diligence and how to find your next deal. You got to research all of that, all of it. Nothing. You can't leave anything to chance. When was the property first listed? I've actually given you some resources where you can go and find out when did it first come on the market, so you know exactly how many days it's already been on the market, and you'll know whether or not this guy's, or whoever the person is selling it, is in distress, or is just selling it because of other reasons identified identified over here. So Jeff, you got to also check whether or not it's already been discounted. How long have they lived there? And all the comparable sale and the spatial analysis, all that falls under all that we've covered in module 2 for how to find your next deal and due diligence. All that you got to have. So that is all part of getting as much information as possible. What is the maximum price you should pay? Your financial feasibility and your desktop valuation should tell you that. Desktop valuation will give you a ballpark figure, and we discuss the resources that you can use to get a desktop valuation. Financial feasibility, you've got a development margin that you can play with that gives you the residual value of land, and then you can determine exactly what you should be paying for it. And also remember, you have to get the vendor to talk more and get as much information as possible. So the more they open their mouth, the more power they are giving up. So, and trust me, I've learned this the hard way. So get as much information as possible. Second thing you got to do is maximize your leverage. Things like, how much do you want or need that property? You got to identify that. If you try and be desperate, it's not gonna you're not gonna be able to negotiate a better price. So make sure that you've got more than one option. So you go and negotiate. You're trying to negotiate a property. So make sure that you've got 4 or 5 of them lined up that you've shortlisted, that you can put an offer on, so that you do not come across as desperate. So how much does the other party need? So you can establish this by asking the right questions from step 1. So how can you strengthen your position? Early settlement or more options? How can you weaken the other party's positions? Highlighting what you have uncovered about the property in your due diligence process, or in your in all the different modules that we've covered earlier. So that's important to understand.